Camelot331 here, and today I'm going to tell you a story that doesn't necessarily have a happy ending, and it's extremely messed up, and it's something that still happens today, at least in the district that I worked in. So let's get into it. Now, I've talked in the past about how GameStop actively encourages, their associates to sell to people or just add things to the transaction, like warranties or power-up cards, to people that don't speak English or from another country or something to that nature, because generally, if you do that to somebody like that, they won't really argue it with the receipt because they have a hard time with English anyway, and they won't really understand because they're not accustomed to it. But this story deals with something that's way deeper, way more diabolical. It's pretty messed up. So when I worked at GameStop, I had the exact same DM for 11 years. A man that is still working there right now. As you're watching this, he is still there. My DM not only actively and openly started female assistant managers and store managers at a drastically lower pay rate than their male counterparts, he also refused to hire or promote any person of color. He required us to let him know who we were hiring and when. If we asked to hire, for example, an African American, he instantly refused it every single time. And I thought my DM was reasonable before I got to really know him. Because one time, I hired a super cool, talented dude, just bursting with personality. And I hired him without letting my DM know. And this guy happened to be an African American. And I thought I would never hear the end of it. Every time he would call my store, his first words would be, "Have you fired that boy yet?" Which completely infuriated me because this dude was like my friend. And he was really, really talented, and the DM just never gave him a chance, ever. Eventually, my DM just walked into the store and fired that associate for apparently refusing trades on some certain day. He never gave evidence or anything. Just told him to leave, which, keep in mind, is not a fireable offense. Refusing trades once is not a fireable offense at all. Now, this associate wasn't full-time, so he wasn't eligible for unemployment. Now, I know what you're thinking. Why didn't you just complain to HR about it? Right? I get comments like that all the time. Why didn't you just complain to HR or let someone know what's going on? And if you're familiar with my past videos or any other person's videos on YouTube, you'll realize that they don't do anything when you do that. Most corporations, including GameStop, will do absolutely nothing if you call to complain on a corporate employee to HR. It'll actually, more likely than not, get you fired. I'm still friends with that old associate, and I still talk to him occasionally. I lost so much respect for my DM when that happened because I wasn't really, you don't really know when people are like that, until you know. But that wasn't the only time he did that. Another time he did it was way, way worse. He ruined someone's life, him and GameStop, because they were involved. They had to be. So he and GameStop ruined a guy's life just because of the color of his skin. Like, he had pure hatred for minorities, just hated minorities. It's insane. Now, this guy is another guy that I hired without my DM's knowledge. He was a Mexican. Let's call him Hector. Now, I thought my DM's problems were only with African Americans at the time. Well, I was extremely wrong. This guy kind of proved him wrong, though. He was the top of the leaderboards in the region every single week in numbers. All legit. He was a master, an absolute master salesman. And I loved him not only for that, but I also loved him for introducing me to the delicious, delicious Mexican cuisine and queso every single day. I would drink queso directly from the teat of the goat if I was given the opportunity to do so. Because queso is love and queso is life. And that is what he taught me. It's all I ever think about. Thanks to that guy. And of course, I recommended him to be promoted over and over and over because his numbers were the top in the entire region. And not only that, he was, great at operational things as well. So he was just like top notch in every category, man. But my DM, of course, outright refused it. Just a little tidbit. My district was comprised of 16 stores. 16 stores. 98% probably of the associates in those 16 stores were all white. And I know what you're thinking. Well, maybe the demographics called for that. Well, no. There was one store specifically that was in an area that was over 90% 95% minority. Easy. And there was 15 white dudes working on staff there. So if that gives you any indication of how strict my DM was about hiring minorities, that's it right there. Well, fast forward a year. Okay, Hector's still working for me. And we just got our results back from an inventory, which is where we count all the merchandise in the store and see what's missing or, what has popped up. Well, we were about $2,000 short of merchandise, which is about $500 more than where you would like to be. It wasn't a bad result, but it wasn't that great either. Then I get a call from my DM claiming that Hector had been stealing. And he said, I'm going to nail that Mexican to the wall. And he put the F word on the end of that. But he said that. And I don't know what that phrase means. Nail somebody to the wall. I have no idea what that means. I guess it's just like an old white dude saying. I have no idea. Nail him to the wall. But I think it meant like dead to rights. I don't know. But he claimed the inventory was bad. And, Hector was the reason. So he comes in, he investigates. LP basically sends him some transactions to go over. And of course, the DMs never use the computer, so I have to basically walk him through it or basically just do it for him. Even though he was supposed to actually work in a store on the register one day a week somewhere, he never did that, ever. He couldn't even navigate like the POS at all, the point of sale. Had no idea how to navigate the register at all. So we reviewed a few things and we came up with some answers basically. So it turns out Hector was taking his power-up card, or just a random one that he looked up. And if somebody maybe didn't have enough money, like they were $1 or $2 short, he would look up a power-up card and use it to knock $1 or $2 off for somebody that was short so they could go ahead and get their game. Which is great customer service, but it is against policy. You can't just, give people, discounts here and there. And keep in mind, and I can't stress this enough, it wasn't his employee discount. It was just a power-up card that he would randomly look up to get somebody 10% off. So yeah, is that against policy? Yes. Should he be terminated for that? I would have put him on a first and final. But in my opinion, it probably didn't warrant a termination. Well, my DM wasn't happy with just a termination. So he did some poor math and claimed that Hector had cost the company $1,100 over the last 3 months. $1,100. Which wasn't true at all. All he did was take all of Hector's transactions from the last 3 months and just add up the power-up cards that were used on it. Even though 90% of them were completely legit, probably more than 98% were completely legit, but he said that every one of them was illegitimate now. So he claimed that Hector cost the store $1,100 over the course of 3 months. He realistically probably knocked off like $30 over those 3 months. Which helps our image anyway, because those people are like, oh, wow, you didn't have to do that. Thank you so much. I'll be back next week, bringing more customers in. But I get that it's against policy. I understand that. But what he did to this associate did not match the crime, basically. So he's blaming Hector for stealing $1,100. Well, in the city that store is in, guess how much money of internal theft you have to steal to be charged with a felony in that city? You guessed it, $1,000. And guess what? My DM knew this. So my DM goes to the local police department. And on the next day that Hector worked, with a store filled with customers because of the holidays, he comes in and takes Hector to the back with police, cuff him, and have him arrested and basically make him walk out in front of all these customers and everything. He didn't even have the decency to take him out of the back door. So I watched my friend get walked out in cuffs over something that I know didn't warrant that at all. Because I knew. I tell this story because Hector actually reached out to me recently, very recently actually. And he told me what happened after, because I never knew. He was gone after that. He told me that GameStop pursued legal action against him, and he was charged with a felony. Apparently, GameStop provided the transactions, all the ones, even the ones that were legitimate, like with the normal power-up card on it, and he tried battling it in court, and he got convicted of a felony. He told me he was struggling to get a job anywhere because he fails the background check every single time. So now he works basically under the table doing hard labor, basically, which ruined my day. to hear that. So I decided that I would tell his story. My DM would always tell me, if you hire that black guy, man, you're just gonna have a lot of theft. Or if you hire that Mexican, you're just gonna end up with nothing but theft. Like, he was that ignorant. It was insane. And keep in mind, he was like a 60-year-old white dude from like good old boy town. Like, he did not associate with minorities in any way, shape, or form. I remember one time we had an African American man with unreal like talent. His resume was huge. He had like 20 years manager experience and all that. And my DM would not offer him a position. He was like, nope, won't even look at it. And that guy actually ended up going to another company and making like triple what a GameStop store manager would make, like a week later after he was denied. That DM, by the way, is still working there right now. I can't stress that enough. He is still there right now in charge of hiring and training people to this day. And he wasn't part of the big cut. He's still there. And not only is he still there, he's not over 16 stores anymore. He's over 25. And I like to think the entire company runs this way, because when I would go to managers conference, it was almost 100% just white. The managers conference from all over the U.S. There's stores all over the U.S. and it was 100% white, nearly, probably 98%. Apparently, GameStop has literally no program of diversity at all, or they just outright avoid minorities altogether. The DM is still there and he still has influence. That is insane to me. He kept Egg for 13 years. If that tells you anything, Egg, who would do crazy things in the back room, kept him for 13 years. That DM. So F's in the chat for my boy Hector. I love that man. He is a great man. His name's not really Hector, but it is in this story. Boycott GameStop at all costs, man. It's a company that needs to die. It just needs to go away. Because not only is it crashing and burning, and they're trying to stay afloat, they're just doing the exact same things that kept them from being successful in the first place. They're just still doing them and expecting different things, which is the definition of insanity. Doing the same thing and expecting a different result every time. Thank you so much for watching. Thanks, patrons. I love you so much. So until next time, get on it. Doggone it. Bye. Yeah.